guys, this is Juju Talk Sports, and I am joined today by SI reporter for the San Francisco 49ers, host of the Cohn Zone, and one of my favorite sources for information, Mr. Grant Cohn. Welcome to the Slumpbuster, sir.
Thank you for having me on the Slumpbuster. I'm recording live from the Cohn Zone, so we got a little bit of cross branding going on, which is good. It's an honor to be here. Let's talk some Niners.
Absolutely. Let's talk some Niners, but we had to put this on delay for a little bit because he had some breaking news. So you're telling me right now that Jadeveon Clowney just signed a 1-year, $10 million deal, right, with the Niners?
I'm not saying that. You didn't hear
that.
But there was a report that the Niners have shown interest and are considering signing Jadeveon Clowney, which, I mean, it doesn't seem like they're going to do, but I like the idea of it. I floated the idea in February, so why not?
Well, as his market continues to kind of drop, and it's just someone's going to get him on a cheap deal. So if it's the Niners, definitely, I mean, yes, you look around that team, it's where does he fit? Whose playing time does he take action from? It's but when you think about the Golden State Warriors a couple years ago, right? They weren't worried about finding minutes for all the talent they had. It's just get the most talented pieces. We'll figure it out later. And I think
that's what the Niners should do. There's a limit on how many good players you can have. That if you have one more good player, all of a sudden it's a bad thing. And that's what the Warrior fans used to say about Durant. You bring in Durant and there's not enough basketballs to go around. It's guys, you're overthinking this. And with Clowney, I think one of the things that would be attractive about it from his perspective is he wouldn't have to play a full workload. He'd be in a rotation because the guy's always hurt. So if he could be, play less, still play on pass rush downs, but be healthy and put up better numbers because he's surrounded by so many good pass rushers, it seemed like it'd be in his interest. And, the Niners, I think, can afford him. I don't know if the Seahawks can, but the Niners have $12 million in cap space, and they can create about another $5 million just by cutting Tom Compton and Tevin Coleman, who are totally replaceable. So it seems like if the Niners want him, they can have him. I don't know how much the Niners want him because it didn't seem like they were really urgently going after Jamal Adams. They were interested, but they didn't get him ultimately. It seems like they're not really in the same all-in, win-now mode that other teams around the league are. And I think they should be because God knows what's going to happen to the league in 2021. How do you plan for the future? If you could get Clowney on a 1-year deal, do it. Because if you don't get him, he might go to Seattle, and that would be bad news.
Yeah, especially given their acquisition this past week, depending on when you're listening to this. But yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that sentiment. Do you think where schematically do you think he fits? On the Niners, who do you think suffers? If he goes there for playing time, because obviously defensive line, you get DJ Jones back. Solomon Thomas is just barely clinging on to playing time as is. Who's in, who's out with the Jadeveon Clowney acquisition if you're the Niners?
Right, great question. And again, I'm thinking this is not going to happen. And if it were to happen, it would be just for 1 year. So what they would do is you'd move DJ Jones to the bench. Sorry, DJ, you're a young guy, you got a future, but this is a 1-year thing. You move Jones to the bench. You move Kinlaw to nose tackle. He played that position a lot in college. He's about 330 pounds. He could do it. Kinlaw to nose tackle. Armstead to defensive tackle, where Buckner played last year. Start Clowney at D end. And then in obvious pass rush situations, 2nd and 11, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, bring Ford on the field, take Kinlaw out, and put one of Ford, Bosa, or Clowney at D tackle. And they can rotate, and they've all done that effectively in their careers. I think it would be one heck of a rotation for 1 year. And we've seen teams do they call it NASCAR packages, where you have only one defensive tackle and 3 DNs in obvious pass rush situations. It could work. I think Nick Bosa would be just as good, if not better, rushing against guards. Same for Clowney, same for Ford. So that's how it works.
Yeah, the tough thing about Jadeveon Clowney's market right now, so you think of him as this premier pass rusher, but obviously he's never had double-digit sacks in his career. So a lot of people are debating how much money is this guy really worth? Especially we just saw Joey Bosa got paid a ton. He's not nearly as good as Joey Bosa. I mean, objectively, I think most people would agree on that one. But is it really just a $10 million deal? Is it just all incentives? What's the market for Jadeveon right now?
Well, Clowney's tricky because when he's at his best, he is as good as Joey Bosa, if not better. Joey Bosa and Nick Bosa are consistent. They always show up in every game. Clowney doesn't. Clowney plays when he feels like it, which is maybe once a month. But in that one game, and you never know when it's coming, he's the best player on the field. We saw it against the Niners last year. He almost single-handedly won that game against them in Levi's Stadium. And then the next few days in the locker room, talking to guys like Joe Staley, Mike McGlinchey, they're all like, dude, it's Clowney. He can do that. When he wants to, he's the best athlete on the field. And the issue with him is he doesn't want to enough. That's why he never had a double-digit sack season. But if the Niners can sort of structure it in a certain way where they only give him a one-year deal, there's a lot of incentives, as you said, maybe $13 million a year with incentives. The Niners can afford that if they cut Compton and Coleman. I don't think that the Seahawks could offer that. That should be enough. And now you're getting a guy who can play like a top 10 player in the league when he wants to on a one-year deal in a rotation on a team that is legitimately a Super Bowl contender. I think you get the best out of Clowney.
Okay. Well, speaking of like star acquisitions to the defense, so Jamal Adams was definitely like the prize of the offseason for like any team. So obviously like Niners Twitter has been coming after you pretty hard because obviously you were the first one to drop that the Niners rumors were steaming up with him. What kind of happened there? Like from your point of view, Grant, like, and that led to, of course, the Seahawks just jumping in and offering this crazy package to acquire him.
Well, let me just be clear. I heard one thing from one source, that things were picking up steam. Then someone in Seattle, Corbin Smith, reported that the Niners actually inquired about Jamal Adams. I never heard that, but I believe Corbin Smith. And then finally, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler said the Niners were in on the deal. I believe that to be true, but the Niners denied it. I'm sure there's some technicality that makes them technically not lying about it. But I think that the 49ers were interested, and it came close. Why did it fall apart? Well, I think the key thing here is the pandemic. Everyone knows that the revenue is going down, and so the salary cap in 2021 is going to go down big time. But until about 8 days ago, teams didn't know exactly how the loss of revenue would affect the caps moving forward, i.e., would it only affect 1 year's cap? Would 2021 take on all of the losses, or would they spread out those losses for a long period of time? The teams want to get it over with. They want to just take the losses next year and move on. Players Association doesn't want that, because if they take all the losses in 1 year, that means a lot of veterans are getting cut. So the Players Association wanted those losses to be spread out over 10 years. Owners wanted over 1. They compromised at 5. Originally, when I thought, and the Niners, I think, apparently thought that they might be able to get Adams, it was because he's under contract for 2 more years. He's under contract in 2020 and 2021 at a relatively cheap rate. I think like $3 million for this year, if he's not on the for the Seahawks, and then $9 million next year. And then after that, he's going to need $19, $20 million. But the idea before the pandemic, really, it was clear what the effect was going to be. Everyone thought that the cap was going to go up big time in 2022, majorly. And then when on July 23rd, when the NFLPA and the NFL came out with their deal that said they're going to spread it out over 5 years, that the cap's not going to go up big in 2022, I think the Niners realized, I don't think we can afford him and Trent Williams and George Kittle. The loophole was the fact that you had him under control for 2 years, and in 2022, when he needed to get paid, then the cap would go up. Doesn't seem like that's going to happen anymore. So the Niners were a little conservative, a little cautious, and said, let's not blow up the team for 1 year. And the Seahawks were like, you know what? Let's blow it up. Let's go all in.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that, although it didn't work out for the Rams. But the Rams' problem is that they have Jared Goff. The Seahawks have Russell Wilson, and they're never really quite out of it. So I admire that they're going for it, because in my opinion, they haven't really gone for it in about 5-6 years.
No, I get that. Well, with that said, like, are the Niners still the favorites in the NFC West? Were they ever the favorites? Where are you kind of like leaning post-Adams?
I thought they were the favorites before the Adams trade. Now I think the Seahawks are the favorites, but only slightly. I would consider the Niners a 12-win team and the Seahawks a 13-win team. And that's why Jadeveon Clowney is interesting again here. If the Niners get him, I think I put them back ahead of the Seahawks. And if the Seahawks get him, then I would put them firmly ahead of the 49ers. So I think Adams tipped the scales a little bit. Clowney could do the same. That's why he's an important figure the next few weeks.
Would you say that would be the only appropriate counterpunch, or is there anyone else that you're seeing potentially out there that Niners could go after?
There's a couple of tight ends they could go after. Jordan Reed, Delanie Walker. But these guys aren't going to get big contracts. They would be like veteran minimum contracts with incentives and no guaranteed money, because in Jordan Reed's case, 7 career concussions, didn't play last season, may never play again, probably might need to retire. Delanie Walker's case, almost 36, has missed most of the past 2 years with ankle injuries. So both guys have a lot to prove. They would need to come to camp and show that they're still the guys they were 2-3 years ago. But if they are the guys they were 2-3 years ago, now you're adding a veteran pass catcher who has seasons of 80 catches, 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. Those are the kind of guys that Reed and Walker used to be. I don't know if they are anymore, but if you could add that to an offense that is missing Sanders and Debo, that would be a big deal. So Clowney, to me, is more of a sure thing because he's younger and has more ability. But those two guys are two players to look out for.